as a developer, which will give you the ability to publish apps, access our SDK, and our developer kit. Now, I do not train on Developer Center. I'm going to repeat that. I do not train on Developer Center. So if you're a developer, you come in here, register. We have guides for the Developer Center, and you can work with our support team. But I don't actually train on that piece of the Pack Store. Now, the final, the other one, like I said, is the test. The test marketplace is also for developers, and you will also have a Developer Center. So there's two marketplaces for the developers, and this the documentation will tell you what they're both used for. But again, I'm not going to get into that in detail today. For my demo, I'm actually going to demo in something called the SE Marketplace, which is internal for packs. It's for our sales engineers and our internal people to utilize. And I'm going to go to the Admin Center to demo today. Now, if you're following along, you log into your Pack Store, you log into whatever your marketplace is, and you're going to have it welcome you with your name, very personal, and your marketplace name. So, hello, Jill, welcome. Now, once I see my splash screen, I'm going to now navigate the left side, which is my navigation bar. And it actually can be docked in the lower left-hand corner with the 3 lines. So I'm going to dock it. It recognizes the name of my marketplace at the top, the name of my account, and mine is very generically called Jill Test Reseller. Yours would have your name as you signed up for the Pack Store. Now let's talk about that. Only one person on your team needs to set up your Pack Store account. Let me repeat, only one person on your team needs to set up your account. Once they become the admin, they will set up all the users on your team. So if anyone on the call needs access to the Pack Store, you need to find out if someone on your team already set it up and go to them to set you up. If you need access to the Pack Store, I can provide the form after class as long as you provide your email, and I will make sure you get that form to get your Pack Store set up. But again, only one person on your team needs to set it up. All right, following down along the left side, the dashboard is really just a big old real-time database tracking reporting system. I'm a huge fan of this because it's visual, it's real-time, it's data. So I can see how many terminals I've got out there, 8 terminals, 6 merchants, what kind of models I have. I can see merchant numbers. I can see all kinds of good stuff. Whatever I want to do or see here, I can take any one of these reports and I can view the data, I can download the data, I can schedule reports. So like I said, just a big old database with a lot of great information, and then you can go up here and filter it out. So if you wanted to filter and maybe just see your Android models and you want to just decide, I want to see my Android models, how can you tell who's the admin in your group? Who? That's a great question. Internally, I would check with, who set up the account. I can't answer that for you. I can look it up for you on my end with your company name if there's an admin set up. But otherwise, I would work with your team and find out if somebody set up the account. But great question. All right, so with that, if I want to filter, you see how it's adjusting accordingly with my filtering. So there's all kinds of flexibility here when you're working with your reporting system. All right, other visual feature is the geolocation. Now, I'm a huge fan of geo for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's visual. Number 2, it is global. PAX is a global company, and we are in over 120 countries across the globe. We all use the Pack Store, but the US has its own version or of the Pack Store that we use. With that said, if you were to move to Italy and you decide to support PAX devices, you already know the Pack Store. So I'm just saying that we are global. Now, with that said, if you're supporting terminals in the US and they're Android OS terminals, you can quickly get to the terminals based on location. You can jump to the terminals by serial number. You can see what's going on with the terminals and troubleshoot them from here and get to them from here. Now, Geolocation, some people love, some people hate. Let's talk about it. Again, it only supports Android OS terminals. So like our A920 Pro, our A77, our A35. And you can decide whether or not to turn that geolocation feature on or off at different levels for different terminals. So we're going to jump down to our terminal management on the left side because I do want to address how you would turn that geolocation feature on or off. Now, keep in mind that the PAX store is for all PAX terminals. All PAX terminals. I don't care if they're Android OS or not, because some of us are still out there supporting the diehard S80, S300 traditional OS terminals. And then some of us are, working with our Android. We now have our new Elise workstation out there. There's all kinds of terminals out there. And every single one of them is going to go onto the PAX store, but only the Android's OS are going to be able to support that geolocation. How you turn the geolocation on or off. At the different levels of your hierarchical structure, there will be profile settings. So let's talk about the profile settings. You can inherit them from up above. You can override the settings further down. So if, say for example, we don't turn geolocation on at all, except we're worried about Jill's jump zone because that location has had some terminals walking off the premises, then we're going to override at that level and maybe turn the geolocation on, and also what's called the geofencing. Now, what's the geofencing? It's a way of establishing a perimeter. So if those terminals at this level would disappear, if they're Android OS terminals, we would get alerted. We would get alerted however we turn on the geofence alerts. Now, what is a geofence alert? It can be done either via email, via console, or both. So again, console, does it impact the performance? Not that I'm aware of, and that's a really intriguing question. I would check on it to be sure, and I can get back to you, but as far as I know, there's no impact on performance with geolocation. It's just more of a feature that's turned on. As far as I know, but let me double check on that and I'll get back to you on it. But let's show you this. We need to create separate terminals for Sandbox and Live PAX devices. Is that correct? No. I'm going to talk about that. Hold tight on that question, Mancy, because every single PAX terminal can have a testing enabled on it. So let's hold that question for just a moment. So console versus email. Console means they'll go up above in the notification. Email means you'll get emailed, and then you can decide what users will be emailed about the geolocation feature. All right, so back to my dashboard. Again, only Android will be supported via Geo if you turn it on and off, and that can be done at the terminal management level. So now let's get to terminal management, because this is where everything really happens, and this is where we'll spend the rest of our session for the most part, getting you up to speed on how to add your terminals and push out your apps. Before we do that, I love that the questions are popping up, and I promise I'll get to all of them. And if I don't, I will follow up with you after class, as long as I have your email in the chat window. So I see them popping up, I address them as we go, and some of them we'll address further in the class. So just hold tight on those. Let's talk about terminals and onboarding your terminals. Every single PAX terminal is boarded through the PAX store. Notice I have an A920, a D135, an Elise, a Q20, an E500, an A80. It doesn't matter if it's Android, if it's traditional, if it's an E series, if it's an IM series, if it's an Aries. I don't care. Every single PAX terminal is going to go through a 3-step process. Number 1, we're going to add the merchant or the location and activate it. Number 2, we're going to add the terminal or terminals and activate them. And number 3, we're going to push out our app or apps. So let me show you where you can get those 3 steps and go back over this information after today. Remember, I mentioned this 2-sheeted tool. The Document Center tool is a built-in help. Once you're in your marketplace, you can go to the Document Center tool, two-sheeted tool. And when you get here, it gets you to something called the Fax Packs US. Now, I'm going to throw this in your link in case you want to get to it, in case you don't have access to the Pack Store. This is where you will always find my most current schedule for training. So if you're not sure week to week when the days are, you can go ahead and jump in here and get to my most current schedule. Again, I run these trainings pretty much weekly, a couple a week. Basics are usually Tuesday, Wednesday, advanced a couple Thursdays a month, as much as we can. So that's your schedule. Always the same login. You never have to sign up. Further down, I mentioned the videos. So everything we're covering today is in quick hit videos. So your 3-step process that we're going to go through right now is all in a little quick hit video session. One at a time, you can go through them and then go on to your next video. So please feel free to utilize your videos for help. If you are a developer on the call, I mentioned we do not train on Developer Center. However, we assume you're pretty savvy as a developer. So we do have a guide out here which walks you through step by step, and you can come access this at your own will. And then finally, we have some other documentation for everything we're covering and even stuff we don't. For example, Air Viewer, Air Launcher, we don't cover some of these features. We'll talk about them briefly. Parameter variables. There's a lot of stuff we're going to cover on a high end that have more deeper dive documentation built in here. So feel free to come in and check it all out. We also have some other great features like our Simple Register, which is a free point of sale wizard. If you don't have a developer, you can set up your own point of sale through Simple Register. Room is a paid version of that. RKI is your remote key injection. We'll talk about that. And then your user license agreement. So lots of great stuff out here in the two-sheeted tool. All right, before we dive in and do our 3-step process, I would love it if people would hit the chat window and let me know what kind of terminals you're using out there. Everyone might be using different terminals for different merchants for different reasons. And I just want to see kind of what we're dealing with in terms of those terminals. So like S80s, S300s, the standard old traditional diehards. Thank you, Tara. How about your Android OS, like your 920s, your 77s, your 35s, your Aries series, like an Aries 8, lots of Aries out here, or lots of Android out here, combined with S300s, which is awesome. Excellent, everybody. Anybody using by E-series, like an E500 or E800, some of our E-series, that's what Scholastic uses if you have kids in school. So yeah, lots of different terminals, but it doesn't matter what terminal you're using. We're going to go through this 3-step process today, and no matter what terminal you're boarding, you're going to go through the 3-step process. What really differentiates the terminals, everybody, is the applications. So the applications work on certain terminals, right? So when we get to that step, ooh, E and A series. Thank you, Kaden. That's awesome. When we get to that step is where it's really going to start differentiating, when we hit the apps themselves. So going through the 3-step process is really kind of the same no matter what. So you start at the top level with the name of your account. You then have the ability to build out what are called sub-reseller levels. So let's say I've got some big conglomerate, Jill's Java, across the country, and I want to break it down by region and then by state because we have different updates and POSs and templates and all kinds of stuff we need to do at these different levels. That is referred to as sub-reseller levels. We're going to get into that on Thursday in our advanced class in more detail. It doesn't matter if you're at a top level or a sub-reseller level. What happens next is you're going to add your actual merchant location. Now, merchant location can be a little mom and pop single location off the top level, or those merchant locations could be imported in under, you know, like a sub-reseller level. But for today, we're just going to add a single merchant, and we are going to call this merchant Jill's Juice Bar, okay? So we're going to have Jill's Juice Bar. I have no other required fields except the name of the merchant. And then I have something called activation. Now, activation in the Pack Store without stops us dead in our tracks. So basically, does the reseller tab only show for the admin? I'm using the TSYS Marketplace. Oh my goodness, hang on. And I don't see the reseller drop down. You only see the reseller drop down if you have access. It could be access. It could be permission levels. Yeah, it could be permission levels. So Hugh, who will have to come back and circle back to that, but I'm pretty sure it's permission levels. That's depending what you're seeing and not seeing. Okay, so you might have a read only versus an editing feature. Okay, unless you're the admin, then I don't know. But if you're on TSYS, there's probably a limited access at that level. Who knows? All right, so you'll have to check that out with your admin. All right, so activation, let's get back to this. This is like a green light, go on to the next step, right? Without this, and I'm gonna turn it off just so you know, if I forget to activate my merchant, what's gonna happen is it gets created, but I can't do anything else. So here's what's happening. Direct off my top level, I see Jill's juice bar is currently inactive. Looking at Jill's jump zone, this one is active. So how do I make Jill's juice bar active to go on to step 2, which is to add my terminal or terminal? So here's my interactive part of the class. Let's hit our chat window and let's see who can get the answer first. Where am I going to go to activate my merchant? Oh, there we go, Tara. Ding, ding, ding. You get Brooke. There we go. Ding, ding, ding. We have a couple winners here. Is the 3-dotted tool. Intuitively, this is your activation. So it's really like flipping on that switch, green light. And then this is also where if you needed to go back and edit that merchant information, it takes you back to that original window. So if I wanted to, add more detail, I could do that from here as well. So really, once you get in there, you get this 3-dotted tool. You can then disable the merchant to delete it. You could change a user. You can do something called merchant migration. And this is a new feature in our latest release. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Before we go on to step 2, notice that it defaults to terminal list, assuming your next step is to add your terminal or terminals. But notice you can go back to merchant detail. You can, this is where the profile settings you can override. This is where we start working with something called parameter variables, which are connected to templates, which I'll talk about in just a moment. And this is where you have reporting functionality at a more granular level at the different levels of the hierarchical structure. But where it's going to default is on step 2. Once the merchant is in place and active, if it's a mom and pop single location, you never have to add the merchant again, right? Your merchant is in there, you're done. Second step is to add your terminal or terminals. You can do it with a plus terminal single add, or because we're working with a big old database, we have all these mass operations like importing the terminals. Now, I would recommend not importing terminals until you maybe build that initial template file. So people use the term, I'm going to add the terminal and build the initial file. That means you're really just building a template so you can push it out to the rest of the terminals at a group level instead of doing it one at a time. So this is where we're going to go through a single add, build that original template, and then we'll talk about groups and pushing out those updates to that group of terminals and importing them in the advanced class. So first, let's get the foundation. I'm going to add the single terminal, and I come up with a create terminal window. I'm going to call this Jill's Juice test. Okay, so I'm going to call it a test terminal. Now, every single PAX terminal can go into it. You can enable a testing mode. Okay, so somebody asked, do I need a sandbox or not? It's up to you. Some people like to have separate terminals, but you can use a real terminal, enable testing, and play around with it without processing. So they're kind of interchangeable, but I'm not going to make the call for you on how you want to do that. Some people like to have test terminals separate for tests, and that's totally up to you. So quantity is only going to be relevant if you have sequential serial numbers. So if I put in 10 and I put in the starting serial number, it would give me the ending serial number. Now, how likely are you to have sequential serial numbers out of the box? It can happen, but I'm going to say no, we're just going to do a single terminal right now. Okay, now, I'm going to jump past the activation and I'm going to go straight down to my serial number. Why? Because every single terminal is going to have a unique serial number, and the pack store recognizes every single one of them. So you can't put in a serial number that's already there. It won't let you duplicate. But the cool thing about it is, once I put that serial number in, I want everyone to pay close attention to manufacturer and model right now, because the second I put in the last digit of this serial number, don't blink, I'm putting in the last digit of this serial number, boom, it knows it's a PAX terminal, it knows it's an A60. Now, had I not known that, and I went to my thing here and I said, okay, it's an A920, and then I put the serial number in, boom, it takes it. You can't screw this up. Does everybody hear me? You cannot screw this up. We have the estate built in where you know what the pack store knows what the serial numbers are. Now, let's say you don't know what the serial number is, okay? Why, Jill, would I not know a serial number? Well, you may not know a serial number if the distributor is shipping the terminals and you don't have the serial number list yet and you're just in here playing around. Can you leave the serial number empty? The answer is yes. And the answer is because if you don't activate the terminal, it doesn't require a serial number, but the pack store has a built-in TID. Now, this can be absolutely confusing because a TID to us is a terminal ID, right? But with the pack store, it's called a terminal initialization code. It is actually an auto-generated placeholder within the pack store. Let me repeat, it's an auto-generated placeholder for the pack store, okay? Has nothing to do with your bar sheet with the terminal ID, nothing to do with that at all. That's a whole separate ball of wax when we get to the app itself. So whether I have a serial number or not, it's going to generate that TID. So watch what happens. Even if I don't activate the terminal, if I go to this top line, it knows where that terminal is residing. In Jill Test Reseller, under Jill's Juice Bar, here's the serial number I provided. The system generated that TID. The model is recognized by the serial number. Okay, now, once again, if we forget to activate, boom, I'm just going to activate from here. Now, obviously, we need to activate to go to the next step. Excuse me, what is the next step? The next step is to push out your app or apps. Now, until you push out your app or apps, right now, the pack store is not finding or discovering that terminal. It can see that it's the serial number, the model, it can see what it looks like, the visual, but none of these menus are going to be filled in. So your basic information is empty. Your app and firmware is empty. Your settings are empty. Your parm variables are empty. Your air viewer is only, if you have a premium marketplace, you have to pay for air viewer separate. Go Insight is the reporting tool, which will always be in place. Okay, so let's go back. How do I get the terminal to be discovered? I'm going to push out my app or apps, or the other thing you can do is this yellow button you can synchronize. But you know what? We're not going to synchronize because we need to push out the app or apps. So once we get here, I've had the question often come up in class. Well, Jill, how do I know what app I'm supposed to use? Well, here's the thing. Because they know, the system already knows it's an A60, when I go to push out my app, it's going to already filter my app list to only give me the apps that support an A60. If I had put in an S80 serial number, it would only give me the apps that support an S80. If I had put in an Aries 8, it would only give me the apps that support an Aries 8. You get the gist. Okay, again, you can't really screw this up because your serial number drives the model, which drives the apps. Now, you're still going to have choices. I get an error message saying terminal serial number already exists. Okay, if a serial number already exists, that means the terminal is still connected to a previous merchant. Jeremy, you're going to have to work with our support team for them to release that for you and or the previous merchant if you have a relationship and can talk to them. Okay, Jeremy, thank you. That's a great question. It happens all the time. So yeah, please go to those links to get that done. All right, so with this, back to here, what kind of apps do we have? We have something called standard apps, which are really your developer apps. And then we're going to have something called parameter apps, which are usually connected to your processor. So let's say, for example, I'm processing with TSYS, okay? Now, I'm not upselling TSYS as a processor. I'm just saying the parameter app is where you're going to build that parameter file, that you're going to build that template, right? So I have a TSYS Sierra app. I have a TSYS Sierra lodging app, which are both parameter apps. And then I've got two standard apps, one for Heartland, one for iMobile 3, right? So again, parameter apps are really the ones that are going to have those parameters, like the terminal ID, the merchant ID, the ones that let you process the payments. So if I'm processing with TSYS, if I'm not doing lodging, it's a pretty easy answer, right? No, well, let's say it's not TSYS. Let's say I'm processing with Elevon. So, oh, there's only one Elevon Android app to choose from. That's an easy breezy, right? What about Vantif? You know, so is Fiserv on there? Okay, so Fiserv may not, every processor's out there. It may not be under Fiserv, depending on what other name might it be under. Let me just check for Fiserv. I don't see it under Fiserv. What else might it be under? BroadPaws? Oh, Nashville. So Nashville can be Omaha. Okay, so Omaha, if it's Android, it's going to say Omaha, but if it could be FDRC, First Data, like First Data Rapid Connect. So if it's a traditional OS, like an S80 or S300, it might still be under FDRC for First Data Rapid Connect. So you kind of got to look. But for Android, it's going to be under Omaha in this case. So just as an example, let me go ahead and grab this Omaha. I don't want the Spark base. I don't want the EPI, right? So this is going to then drive my parameter window, which I don't care what parameter app you choose. You're going to have a parameter window, which is going to be very simplistic across the board. Like say I want to do a contactless setting. I would go to my EMV button. I would, change my contactless setting. Let's say I wanted to put on a surcharge. I'd go to my EDC button. I don't care who the processor is. And I could go down and I could find my surcharge option down here. Oh, I want to enable my surcharge. Okay, so I'm not going to go through parameters because that's not what this class is for. But every single button is going to have a processor button, or every single parameter window. So if I'm processing with Omaha, I'm going to have my little var or tear sheet in front of me, and I'm going to have to put in, okay, my merchant ID, my device ID, any required fields that's going to allow that processing to take place. But here, ding, 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 is where I'm going to introduce the concept of parameter variables. Now, not everyone on this call will use parameter variables, but if you're going to be pushing out this template to 5, 10, 100, 1,000 terminals, I don't care. If you're going to push out a template and every terminal has a different device ID, you're not going to put in one and have to change it on every single terminal manually, okay? You're going to instead incorporate something called a parameter variable, which is going to be a little syntax with a pound sign, squiggly brackets, a placeholder. If this is too advanced for you, come back for the advanced class, but this is what we need to do with templates when there's data that's going to be different from terminal to terminal. Okay, this is what parameter variables are. Now, if I add just a single parameter variable like this one, then if I had 100 terminals, I'd import those variables and I'd push it out to a big group, and the template would go out and it would populate all those fields accordingly. Okay, so there's different steps in a different process here. If I'm over your head, disregard me. I'm just doing this as a demo today to introduce the concept of parameter variables for those using templates. Now, once I save a template, and I'm going to call it JJuice test 1. Okay, I might have that name out there already, but hopefully not. Oh, of course it does. Okay, because I'm not very consistent or very creative. Juice test 1. Let's try that one. All right, so, oh my goodness, Jill. JJ, test one. I need to clean up my template list, apparently. Okay, so I've now created a template. I'm still going to push it out to the existing terminal that I'm working with because I want to test that on this existing terminal that I'm working with right now. So once I get the parameter page filled out, it takes me to a step that says activate task. Now, this is very simplistic. I can just activate, but I want to talk about the immediate push or the scheduled push. Now, immediate push will push only if there's not an open batch. If there is an open batch, it will pause and it will not push till the batch is closed. However, there's a force update. This force update is going to give you a big red flag and say, ooh, this is going to override your batch. So you never want to force unless you absolutely would have to. So again, I usually do an immediate push. If you prefer to schedule it at night or whatever, you can do that. But again, this will not impact your open batch. We're going to activate that push. It's going to look for my single terminal. And because I had a variable, it now wants to know what the value of that variable is for this terminal. And now I'm going to activate the push. And once I activate the push, it's going to go discover the terminal, push out the app, and this is what it's going to look like. So we're going to jump back to my window here really quickly and show you that with an Android, it's going to look like what's on the left side of my screen. You see the Omaha button on that beautiful, sleek, handheld Android device. And then the Mango Pay, which is next to it, that's a point of sale. Pushing out a point of sale is really very simplistic. If you have a point of sale and you have a bunch of terminals, you probably want to push it out to a group. But just for demo today, I am going to show you how to push out a standard non-parameter app so you can see what that looks like. Before we do, while this is looking for that terminal, I'm going to take you back to terminal management to show you what it looks like once a terminal gets out there. You can see it on the list. Here's Jill's Juice. It's got all the information. I can get to it from here, and it will populate as soon as it's found. Now, for time's sake, I'm just going to jump out to an Android that's already out there discovered so you can see what it looks like once it's discovered and once it populates. So here's an A920, not that much different than an A60 that I had. Notice how it populates: dashboard, monitor, location, all the terminal details get populated right down to time zone and IP. It creates something called an operation log. It recognizes every piece of app and firmware that's on that terminal. It shows if there's any pending pushes and whatever the successful history is of stuff you've already pushed out. Under setting, it shows all your hardware, all your certification information. This is where you can do remote terminal control, system configuration. Here's where the parameter variables are recognized. Remember this DI with the squiggly bracket thing I created? There's the value. Again, Error Viewer is for premium marketplace. You pay extra. And then your Go Insight is your reporting functionality. So really, what we want to see here is how this all comes together once the terminal is found, right? So now that we've seen this here, what would happen if I needed to push out a point of sale? Again, I can go to my Plus Push app or any standard app for that matter. Let's say I'm pushing out this Reef Terminal app. It's a standard app. The biggest difference is there's going to be no parameter window. Okay, so really it just wants to know, do we want to schedule it? Do we want to push immediate? And that's up to you. And again, it's going to go look for that terminal, push out that app, give us a status update. Now, as we're going through all of this, I don't care if you're a single location like Jill's Juice Bar, single location mom and pop shop, or you start going with the big dogs and you've got a big conglomerate across the country like Jill's Java. So if I have Jill's Java across the country and I want to start breaking down my terminals based on region, and then within the region, I want to break it down by state. The whole idea of this sub-reseller level is to be able to control your updates, like for your templates, your point of sale, whatever updates you want to be doing. The beauty of this is, these levels help you to control and start creating these groups. So the group management, the template management is what we're going to explore really deeper in the advanced class on Thursday, but I'm going to give you an introduction to it today. Why? Because you want to work smarter and not harder. Let's talk about real world. Real world, you may have a terminal that gets moved around from location to location. Okay, maybe, and I'm just going to go to, instead of the bigger, higher level, I'm going to go to Jill's Jump Zone and Jill's Juice Bar are owned by the same owner. And because Jill's Jump Zone has this A920 that we swap between locations for the big grand openings, I want to take that terminal, and the minute I grab that terminal and I go to move it, do you see the move function at the bottom? I can add it to a group, I can move it. Now watch what happens. When I want to go to move this to Jill's Juice Bar, all I have to do is tell it where I want it to be moved, and I'm just going to have it moved to Jill's Juice Bar. And this could be done, you know, in the hierarchical structure to another sub-reseller level. I don't care where you're moving to and from. But when you go to move it, it's really transparent. What's going to happen is, oh, it's gone from Jill's Jump Zone. If I go to Jill's Juice Bar, bam, there it is. But here's the problem. That terminal was set up to work at Jill's Jump Zone. Jill's Jump Zone has a different point of sale. They've got different, you know, different apps. They've got different templates, whatever. So as soon as the terminal gets moved to a different location, you want it to be functioning in that new location without your intervention. That would be a goal, right? If I'm moving this terminal around and I want it to be functional when it gets there, that's another upselling point of a group, because you can create something called dynamic groups, where maybe you have Jill's Juice Bar A920s. The minute those A920s hit Jill's Juice Bar, you want them to be recognized, and you want the pushes to be in place for the template, for the point of sale. This is why you're coming back Thursday, because I'm going to show you how to set up those dynamic groups based on where those terminals are located. It's going to automatically discover them, automatically push those terminals out or push those updates out, and you never have to stop and make sure that that's happening. And that's the power of the Pack Store. It is really designed to support you being like kind of hands off, no intervention. My terminals are functioning. I don't care where they're coming and going. That is the goal. So how does this all work? When you set up the dynamic group, it recognizes the location that you moved it to, and it automatically will find the terminal for you. And if there's active pushes in place, it will push the stuff out for you. So it actually, and yeah, there's so much more I could go into here. You know, if there's like Air Launcher, which is actually what it looks like on the actual terminal itself, like your wallpaper and auto start of the apps and all kinds of stuff like that. There's all kinds of stuff you can do out here. And I get way ahead of myself because I get super excited. But group and template management is where we take the next level class, because you need to come back and learn how to set up those groups, create the pushes, and also be able to control those templates. So when you get out here and you start working with lots of templates, you can come out here and you can edit them, update them. You can sit here and say, I've got 2 templates, which one is which? I can compare my templates, see what parameters are turned on and off in each one, and really be able to work with the system on a much higher scale. So that is why I'm going to really encourage you to come back for that advanced class, because we'll get into how do I create those sub-reseller levels? How do I import, export? How do I create the groups and create the pushes and update the templates and work with my role management and my reporting? So on behalf of myself and the entire PAX team, I really want to encourage you to come back. As I mentioned, we offer that class like every other week if possible, but we have it on the 29th, the 13th, and the 3rd. So please encourage you to do so. Now, before we leave today, we had a pretty big agenda for the basic class, The one thing I have not talked about specifically is role management. And I do want to take a moment for any admins on the call to show you how to set up your users, okay? So if you have not yet set up your users and you're the admin, I want you to stay on. For those of you who are jumping off, which I see a bunch of people jumping, totally cool. I get that you need to go and there's a lot going on, but I am going to throw a survey out here if you're interested and you want to give us some feedback, that would be great. Otherwise, provide your email. I have a follow-up email with all this great information for you, including our class schedule and this big old slide deck with all the stuff we've covered today. So again, if you're jumping off, if you are not a admin, thank you for joining. So admins out there, let's talk you through how to set up your users. Hopefully I still have some admins left on the call. When you go to set up your users, there's going to be two options. Lower left, you have user management, you have role management. By the way, this is all on videos, quick hit videos in the Document Center tool. But everyone would think you go to user management, but this is not where you're going to go to set up your users. This is more like, okay, I'm an IT person. I need to remove the person from the list. I need to reactivate them. As an admin, this is all you're going to do here, okay? So you kind of like control the user list from here to remove or reactivate. Where you actually set up your users is at the role management level, okay? There are 4 built-in roles. Obviously, an admin role is built in for everybody that's going to be admin. We've got an operator role, which is a little less. We've got a viewer role, which is even less than that. And we've got something called the user admin role, which is like an IT role. I'm going to delete users permanently kind of thing. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't come in and create your own roles, because there is an ability here to add your own roles. And I've got a great little 2-minute video that shows you how to add a role. It's not rocket science. If you want to add your own roles and add your users to those roles, you can do that at different levels. So let's just go through an example quickly. For every role window, you have a little icon at the bottom that lets you add a user. So let's say Kirk left the company. We're going to remove him as a user. And then I need to add Josie on. So I'm going to do a plus sign with a head here. Let's say it's Josie at class.com. She's going to be my new admin that I just brought on. Josie will receive an email from me or from the Pack Store with a link to my Pack Store. And because she was set up as a user at the admin level for Jill Test Reseller, she's going to come in here and she's going to see everything I'm seeing and be able to work in my Pack Store. So that's really all there is to it. Now, I will upsell the levels once again. Let's say I bring somebody on just to work with the Michaels account. Okay, so I bring somebody on. I only want them to be able to access the Michaels account. If you bring somebody on that you only want to admin a certain level, or you want to start breaking down your levels for reporting purposes and setting up your groups and all those good things, another upselling point of the sub-reseller level is you can navigate to it. So in this drop down up above here where I have my high level, my top level, if you're the admin of the levels you create underneath it, so let's say I am the admin of my Michaels account. I can come into the Michaels Midwest and I can navigate just to the Michaels Midwest. What does that do? It actually isolates just that section of my structure. So now if I bring on somebody to handle my Michaels account, and that's all I want that user to see, when you isolate that level and you come down to your role management, guess what? Josie is not here. I've got somebody named Gina. Let's say Gina left and she's not going to be managing Michaels anymore, but I'm going to add in Kaden, and Kaden is going to be my new manager of the Michaels account. I'm going to send Kaden an email. Kaden will receive that email with a link, and when Kaden logs in, all that Caden is going to see is the Michaels substructure, and that's all he will be able to access and work with. So above and beyond the different levels for creating the groups and the templates and the updates and the reporting, you also have this ability to isolate and provide permission access, very granular at these different levels. So that's just another upsell of coming back for the advanced class. I know we only have about 2 minutes left, but I get super excited to share this stuff with you. So I hope that's helpful. And I hope that you're leaving here with more than you came with, and you feel confident going through your 3-step process, which is really what this class was all about. So the 3 steps again were to add your merchant. Once you add your merchant, to add your terminal or terminals, and then once you get your terminal or terminals out there, to push out your app or apps. So questions, comments, positives, hit the chat window. I see we lost a few people, but again, do not forget that your best help right now is to go to that Document Center tool. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you guys, Charlie, Kevin, appreciate it. And that Document Center tool is really helpful for just getting out here and getting to the videos and the developer doc and other docs. And other than that, please work with our support team. Give them a call. They're awesome. Please do not come to me direct. Unfortunately, I'm a pretty busy girl, and we have a tracking mechanism with our support team that they utilize, and I'll just forward you to support if you come to me. So yes, thank you for joining today. So excited to have you on board, and looking forward to having you work with PAX. You're welcome, Mohit. I'm glad. Have a great day, everybody. I'll be on the chat for a couple more minutes, but otherwise I'm jumping off the video for now. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you for coming on. Take care, everybody.